Fine, I understand. Just don't say I didn't warn you. And take care of yourself, okay, Do?
So who's Faria?
Law?
If what Avakir said is true,
More
it would
lord.
seem the people of Lenegis are being kept in the dark about what's happening down on Dana.
They seem to be just as clueless about what's going on up here in their own world. Despite the fact that it's actually here that the wedge originally came from.
We need more information. Let's talk to the citizens, see what we can find out.
While we're at it, we can ask them about the Red Woman, too.
And don't forget about finding the way to the Forbidden Zone either.
Let's leave the talking to Shion. We can't have a bunch of Danans poking their noses around.
Good idea. I think that's for the best.
I shall assist.
You sure?
Being a lord on Lenegis has its advantages.
Right. Then we'll leave it to you two. The Danans among us should probably keep our heads down.
What if people freak out?
I shall explain it away by saying I'm leading you.
What are we, dogs?
What could be so important? It's worth destroying people's livelihoods and homes in the process. It's just unbelievable. Uprooting an entire city as if it were mere building blocks. Someone's got an awful lot of questions to answer.
From how it looks, they must be siphoning off astral energy from Dana, and then sending it to Rena.
But why do all this? What for? Surely they can't be using all that energy for the crown contest.
Whatever their purpose, disrupting their siphoning process alone won't be sufficient. Not while we still don't know what their endgame is.
He's right. We need to stop this from happening ever again.
This Forbidden Zone might be where we find some answers, right? So what are we waiting for? Let's get moving!
You heard him. You don't have time to stop and chat. Let's move.
Oh, dear me. What an unspeakable mess this has all become. Just look at the state of our city. Even the Zeugles have stopped heeding our commands. Whatever did we do to deserve this?
You really have no clue what might have caused this?
Would that I have. Alas, there was no warning, no prior decree. His Highness must have deemed it unnecessary for us to know. We have no choice but to grin and bear it. But do my eyes deceive me? Could I really be standing in the presence of his lordship, Dohalim of the House Ilkaris?
He's pretty famous up here.
I believed he was on Dana.
Your eyes do not deceive you. It is I, one and the same. I have returned to fulfill a special duty, the details of which I cannot divulge.
As your lordship wishes. First Lenegis mutates beyond recognition, now this unexpected visit? The Sovereign's plans are inscrutable indeed. The Ilkaris house has produced a great many lords over the centuries. I shall be praying for your victory in the latest crown contest.
Your good wishes do me an honor.
Okay.
So, I've been wondering, do you think when Lenegis was built, it was even made with people living here in mind?
What do you mean?
Well, none of this happened by coincidence, right? They must have designed it to transform like this. But then, if they knew people were going to live here, you'd think they would have taken that into consideration, to avoid all this chaos.
Ordinarily, yes. You'd think so. Trust me, as far as we were concerned, Lenegis was our home, nothing more. No one knew about all this. It makes you wonder whether the city was just built on as an afterthought. But if so, to what exactly?
Sorry, that probably sounded weird, huh?
Not at all. Sometimes it takes an outsider's eye to help you notice what you've been missing all along. This place is a mystery, that's for sure. Something tells me we'll find answers where we're going, though.
Yeah, you're right, Shion. I'm sure we will.
Get across there.
Everything will be okay now.
I know the basics of healing.
Your lordship. Oh, what a great honor it is to finally meet you. I descended to Dana during the last crown contest also. Alas, when the contender I was backing failed to clinch the title, I returned. I witnessed the deaths of so many slaves.
Indeed.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're looking for a woman dressed all in red. Have you seen anyone of that description?
All red, eh? No, I can't say I remember anyone like that. I imagine she'd stand out somewhat, too.
Yeah. What about down on Dana during the crown contest? You didn't see anyone like that hanging around the lord you were serving?
What's with all these questions? I've never seen her, okay? Not recently or otherwise. Why do you want to find her anyway?
Never mind. Forget I asked. Sorry to take up your time.
You know, this was like a really good game. Like, I would have put it as like a 9. But the production of this last bit has been, it's like they just really missed the mark.
Is everything okay? You look a little lost.
Hmm? Oh, yes. I can't seem to find my way home, is all. I was just about to make my umpteenth attempt at a new route.
I was hoping to head this way myself. The situation is a real pain, huh?
I suppose the Sovereign knows best. I daren't stay here too long, though. A lower caste can only linger around these parts for so long before I outstay my welcome. I was hoping to avoid it, but maybe I'll have to go that way after all.
You mean you know another way round?
Lord Dohalim Ilkaris! But how? Last I heard, you were in Dana competing in the crown contest.
Yes, strange, isn't it? If you know another route, we'd be grateful if you could tell us.
But of course. Please forgive me. There's a wall that sprung up ahead of here, with what looks to be an entrance in it. I thought maybe it was a passageway between the different quarters, but I've no way of knowing for sure.
It's worth investigating, at least. I shall go and assess the situation. In the meantime, wait for me here. If it looks safe, I'll come and let you know.
You'd really do that for me? A lord troubling himself for someone of my lowly status?
Our lot in life is of little consequence. We are both Renan, first and foremost.
Oh, why yes, my lord. Thank you.
Well, we've canvassed the city for information. What do you think?
No one has the faintest idea what's happened to this city after all. They haven't heard the news about the crown contest either.
You'd think that info would easily find its way up here. Has it always been like that?
Not to this extent, which would indicate that something's suppressing the truth, that Lenegis is under some kind of control.
Given everything that's happened to their city, the people here seem weirdly okay with it all.
Yeah, that one guy even said Azoogle had stopped listening to him. If that's true, these people are in big trouble.
Everything that happens here is attributed to the Sovereign's will. It's the way people have been conditioned. Their belief runs deep. Nothing happens devoid of a reason. To them, it's all part of the Sovereign's grand plan.
The Sovereign's plan. There is one thing I'm still not sure about. Just who is this person ruling over Lenegis?
The Sovereign, of course. He rules from Rena while presiding over both Rena and Lenegis.
Without the lords or anyone in the middle doing his dirty work? Isn't Rena at least the same size as Dana? That's a pretty big dominion for one person to rule over. I would have thought ruling Lenegis alone would be difficult enough.
The points you make are valid, though I confess I'd never given it much thought before. Here, the Sovereign's total authority is as natural as night turning to day. Come to think of it, I know nothing of the nature of how Rena itself is. Shion, have you ever been... No, forgive me. Have you met or crossed paths with, or even heard of someone who's actually made a visit to the homeland?
No, I haven't.
Neither have I. In which case, I would imagine that... But no, surely not. Can it really be that no citizen of Lenegis has ever been there?
Hold up, what are you getting at, Dohalim?
Assuming what I believe to be correct, it's possible that no one on Lenegis has ever laid eyes on the actual Renan homeworld itself. No one but the Sovereign, that is.
But what about trade and communication? There's got to be a flow back and forth, surely.
Not if the Sovereign is imposing his will on Lenegis single-handedly. It could be a one-way street.
But I thought you said that the Sovereign's all the way over on Rena. If that's the case, can he really rule directly over Lenegis from so far away? What if something were to happen to the city, like now?
I'm beginning to wonder what the nature of this Sovereign even is. Alphen said he was forced into the role, right? Just before the ceremony. But Sovereign is also the title given to the almighty Renan ruler. So which one is it?
Whoever wins the crown contest inherits the throne from his or her predecessor, before becoming ruler over all of Rena and Lenegis. Thereafter, that individual is known as the Sovereign. Though, it would appear that the current ruler has gone silent. As for how Volron factors into all this, at this point, I no longer know what to believe.
3 centuries ago, I became the Sovereign here on Lenegis. No, not just became, I was forced to. Me, a Dahnan. 300 years later, we cross paths with Volron, who also bears the Sovereign's crest. That's not the only thing we have in common. We both became Sovereign without winning the crown contest.
Do you think Volron was made Sovereign for the same reason? Because of that ceremony?
I can't say for sure, but it certainly sounds like it.
But that would mean that 2 Sovereigns would need to exist at any one time. One whose job it is to rule, and the other for ceremonial purposes. We never did see Volron's body back in Ganath Haros. Is a new ceremony underway with Volron at its center this time? Could that be what's causing all this strange activity here?
Wait a second. You don't think Volron and the Red Woman are working together, do you? The ceremony can't go forward without the Renis Alma. The same one that the Red Woman stole.
There's something else the ceremony needs. A maiden. And unless there's another one out there aside from me...
Questions, questions, and yet more questions. Ones that it seems will remain unanswered, until we can establish the Sovereign's identity.
If the Forbidden Zone really is off limits to everyone but the Sovereign, that seems as good a place as any to start. For the sake of liberating Dana, too.
Then it's decided. That's where we need to go.
One of the citizens mentioned a passage that she thought might lead to another section of the city. It could point us in the right direction. Let's go find it!
Their cutscene.
With nobody left to run the show, I wonder what the people here are supposed to do. I mean, there's sovereigns up on the Renan homeworld, and all their lords were sent to Dana.
But Dohalim was a lord, right?
Only current acting lords have power. Renan society is quite strict about such matters.
Even if the other lords were still around, I doubt they'd be able to do much about the situation.
I wonder what they'd think if they were here to see Lenegis now. Balsif, Cannabelt, Almadria, and Volron. Now that I think of it, aside from Dohalim, we know next to nothing about the other
What
lords.
it's been the last little bit is nothing but a movie. I agree with you.
Well, yeah, why would we? To us Danans, they were just enemies we needed to overthrow. Nothing more.
I know.
This honestly
Few
feels
lands
like
of our own city,
a
going
game
about their
where
day-to-day lives,
they were told to get it
gets
out.
you thinking.
The game was supposed to be longer, and
It
so they had
feels
to just
strange to imagine the lords living
shove a
so
bunch of
too,
lore really quick into the game.
Yeah, a little.
If you're that curious about them, why not try inquiring with some of the locals? Every lord in their household has their share of supporters here on Lenegis. And luckily for us, the people here are unaware of the events on Dana, which means they should be more inclined to talk to us.
Gotta talk to more people. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a good time to go cook food. Now I have to talk. You want to know which lord I support? Why? Are you out canvassing? I'm with His Excellency Wolsey Tutulus. You probably know him better as Lord Balseth. I know a lot of people consider him to be a giant brute. Believe me, I realize he can be an aggressive man. What those people don't realize is how much he looks after the members of his house. It's fair to say that House Teldillies, I don't know, Teldillies sounds good, doesn't enjoy much esteem. Those of us who serve it will be the first to admit that. But His Excellency always stands up against any who would mean us harm. Out of that we can be sure. His efforts in the crown contest aren't only for his family, but to improve the standing of each and every member of his house. I owe so much of His Excellency. I could never dream of serving another lord.
Balseth had it in him to care about someone other than himself? Really?
It's possible. A change in position can do much to alter one's perspective.
So even he might have had something he wanted to protect.
Lord Dullahim, you have returned. I see you brought aides with you. Do you remember who I am, my lord? Surely you must. Not only do I support House Elkaris, but more specifically his lordship personally. So much so I've been trying to share my appreciation of his lordship to anyone who will listen. In fact, I was planning to publish my extensive writings on the subject through this very terminal for all to read and enjoy. But since the lines appear to be cut due to the recent tumult, I've been unable to upload them. I know since you're all here, I'll just read them aloud. There exists a most handsome man, a man who radiates beauty, whose every word, every syllable is divine poetry. He hails from the famed house Ilkaris, and his name Lord Dullahim. Music is his passion, the arts his great love. The scores of boorish, uncouth men of this land cannot begin to compare to his magnificence. So refined and majestic it is his posture. Why, the mere thought of it brings me to ecstasy. Once he becomes our sovereign, Rena shall bloom anew, ushering in a new era of prosperity for our grand civilization. Until that glorious day comes, I shall forever be praying for his victory, morning, noon, and night. Well, what did you think, my lord? I poured my heart and soul into it, hoping to capture your essence. Wait, I forgot to mention anything about his lordship's love for collecting things. You're right, miss. Real fangirl. She's wanting to go back to his hotel, no doubt. I must take this time while the lines are down to a pendant. Only then will the masterpiece be complete.
I guess she intended to spread it throughout all of Lenegis then.
Good thing the lines were down so she couldn't.
It almost sounded like she was praising them too.
Maybe there was more to the guy than at first glance.
I shall refrain from comment.
Well, I never. To think anyone who'd try to tear me away from House of Ulcris. What do you want? Don't tell me you work for Lord Dullahim or that dreadful Lord Almadrea, do you? You don't? Well, don't scare me like that. To answer your question, I've come from a family that has served House Vulcaris for generations. Indeed, I'm doing all I can to support Lord Ganabelt behind the scenes so that he might emerge victorious. Many think him to be cruel man, but I insist they're utterly mistaken. Though I won't deny he can be strict, he puts Rena's interests front and center like no one else. He advocates that rather stay confined to Lenegis, we should get on to colonizing Dana and expand our horizon. That may, we will become masters of both worlds and overturn our current minority status as Dana's service. That is why he seeks to become our next sovereign. Tell me, is there a greater, more noble ambition than that? I think not. It is a pursuit of power for advancement of all our kinds. It's what makes him an exemplary lord, a model above others. Though I was unable to accompany him myself, my two sons have been blessed with the honor of joining him on the service. As their father, it fills me with endless pride. Good chance I probably killed them.
So horrible to people. Yet he was invested in helping Rena succeed. Doesn't that seem just a little inconsistent?
I'm perhaps biased in this matter, I admit. However, in my mind, while all lords vie to become the next sovereign, they're also meant to serve as guardians of all of Rena.
It seems like Ganabelt also had people he cared about until the very end.
So why couldn't he extend that to us Danis?
This area doesn't look as badly damaged as that other.
Pardon me.
This area falls under the sole jurisdiction of House Cairns, or Cairns. I must ask you to depart at once. Surely you don't claim to be ignorant of our famed house, ruled over by the esteemed Lord Almadrea. If so, I urge you to listen well. In fact, I bid you to listen carefully regardless. Have you ever noticed how in the history of Lenegis, only a few women lords have emerged to compete in the crown contest? Many have theories as to why this might be, but Lord Almadrea squashed the doubts of any naysayers through her sheer might. In fact, not only did she usurp her father and previous family master, she also removed her older brother to claim the seat for herself. She's a woman who stops at nothing to get what she wants, who gives her enemies nary the slightest opening to strike. Truly, Lord Almadrea is a woman of talent. No one in all Arena better exemplifies the virtues of our nation's mediocrity. Soon the age of glorious women sovereigns reigning over Lenegis shall be upon us at last. Alright, fair.
I guess her willingness to stoop to any low came from a survival of the fittest worldview.
And some people here not only shared her belief, but championed it as morally right too.
That doesn't make it true. Too bad they couldn't see. Ridiculous.
How loathsome. Oh, I was just reading about Volron. Can I help you? I was always an ardent supporter of Lord Orogwell Hildress myself. Were it not for his sudden death down in the service, I likely still would be. In my eyes, Lord Orwagall is the true Water Lord. I don't believe for a second that he perished in some accident like they say. As for how Volron runs Ganeth Harris, don't get me started. I hear he enslaves not only Danans, but even his fellow Renans. We may live in a society where to the victor go the spoils, but his actions go against what we have as people, what we as people stand for. Besides, just what sort of family line is this house Ignaceri of is anyways? I never heard of it until he came along, which means they must be among the lowest dregs of society. That such an ignoble lineage could suddenly produce an astral artist capable of ascending to lordship is unheard of. None of it makes any sense, not to mention all of the upheaval around here of late. What is happening to our people?
It seems like the people on Lenegis don't really know much about Volron either.
I remember being quite surprised when the Lord of Ganeth Harros changed so abruptly.
Didn't you have any doubts that something suspicious was going on?
On the contrary. Remember, we Renans are raised to accept everything at face value.
When you think about it, the families of Renan lords must see them differently than the rest of us.
Yeah, despite the brutality they're known for.
They must have had a lot on their shoulders, carrying all the weight and responsibilities of Renan society.
Renans live in a world where strength and power determine their position in the social hierarchy, so they tend to grow up fiercely competitive. But their loyalty to their people is also strong. It's what brings them together against outside forces. And nothing exemplifies that more than the Lords.
That's what makes them the guardians of all of Rena, so to speak.
Right. It's the same reason Balsif hated my guts, and Ganabelt went after you. Because we're threats to Rena.
Guess that makes you an even bigger oddball than we thought.
So, Alphen, have you gained anything from all of this?
Yeah. I think it's made me realize that the Lords were all people, too. Balsif and the others, they all had their own circumstances to deal with as they went through life.
Yeah, but still, just because they had loved ones in their lives doesn't mean...
I know. What they did was horrible. I'm not trying to dispute that. But at the same time, they weren't incomprehensible monsters either. They were individuals, just like the rest of us. So I guess what I'm trying to say is...
You're saying that they weren't bad because they were Renans, or because they were terrible monsters. Even if they did terrible things, they were still just people.
Rinwell.
Am I wrong?
Not at all.
Being a Dahnan doesn't make you a good person. And being a Renan doesn't make you a bad one. I think that's something we've all seen.
Shion and Dohalim definitely make a good case for it.
And I'm going to keep doing my best to make sure I earn that trust. As a fellow human being above all else.
What's a side quest?
I didn't realize Renans oppressed their own kind, too.
And yet, weirdly, none of them seem to mind. Am I the only one who finds that strange?
It is the way things have always been, so no one thinks to question it. You have experience in that regard yourself, do you not?
Unquestioning acceptance of your own servitude. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Even so, the quality of life here seems much higher than any Dahnan city we visited. I used to think it was impossible to build an ideal society without wealth. But I suppose having it doesn't always mean people are treated fairly either.
More to the point, not a single citizen seems to have even heard of the Red Woman.
What if she's not here? What if it turns out we're looking in the wrong place entirely?
It's still too early to say anything for sure.
For all we know, she might be able to blend in, move around unnoticed. I say we hold off judgment until we've exhausted every avenue.
Tell me, Dohalim, has that skill of yours got a name?
And what skill would this be, pray tell?
You know, when you're talking to people around town. The way they suddenly become putty in your hands.
I'm afraid I don't quite follow.
I do. It's called friendly intimidation. Look imposing and speak in a deep, booming voice, and presto, you'll have people wrapped around your finger in no time.
I would never stoop to such scandalous tricks. Any feelings of intimidation are solely in the eye of the beholder.
So there is a knack to it! How do you learn it? Can anyone do it?
Now you've got me curious. Is there special training to master?
Let's see.
We're really
An
having this
obsession with being
conversation right now.
elegant is a must. Oh, and it helps to be old-fashioned, too. Bonus points if you speak in a way no one can understand.
If you've a bone to pick with me, it'd be quicker to just come out and say it.
What? They look up to you, that's all. I'm just helping them along.
Hey! What's got into Alphen and Law all of a sudden?
I can barely understand a word they're saying. And what's with the weird poses? Was it something they ate?
I hope you're willing to take the blame for this one.
I wasn't expecting them to take me so seriously. I'll go and have a word with them.
There's something I just don't get.
What is it?
The crown contest itself has always gone ahead as planned, right? In which case, the current Sovereign of Rena should be whoever it was that won the previous contest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, who was it then?
Hanfricht Milgras, the former Lord of Cyslodia, if memory serves.
So then this Hanfricht whatchamacallem, he's the current ruler of Rena?
The last I heard, yes. Though, admittedly, I haven't actually seen him since the end of the previous contest.
You're saying that ever since becoming sovereign, he's